Alright, so I've got a job for you today, and your job is fix my trash house. Right, I designed this house, and it's not very good. I should be able to do better. I've been doing this for a little while now. So let's have a look at what's going on. I mean, look, here's the body of the house, and here's the roof, and there's a big old gap between them. So if I was trying to 3D print this, these two bits wouldn't even be connected, and they probably wouldn't print right. This chimney's hanging out the side like a weirdo. The windows are skew-if. The door, I don't even know what's going on with. The windows in the door are all weird. Only one of the windows goes all the way through into the house. It's a mess. So you need to fix it. Now, to fix this, you're going to need the house first. And I'm going to give you a link, and you're going to click on that link. And it's going to take you to something that looks a little bit like this. Except instead of being a duck, it is going to be my house. And you will click copy and tinker. And that will open my house in a sort of design space for you, and it'll be attached to your account. So yours will look pretty much exactly like this, right? Now, the way you're going to fix this is by doing what I should have done in the first place, and that is using the ruler. So the ruler is this tool up here on the right-hand side. So you're going to click on the ruler, and once you've clicked on it, you can click anywhere on this work plane you like, and it will slap a ruler down for you. Now, what this ruler does, if you select an object, the ruler will show you lots and lots of information about that object and the object's relationship to the ruler. I'll take you through them one by one. So here's the width of the object. Here's my house. Here's the depth. And here is the height, right over here. Cool. Here is my house and how high or low it is in terms of the work plane. Because the work plane is defined or set at 0. So if that said 1, it would mean that my house is 1 mil off the work plane. If my house was -1, it would mean it is below the work plane by 1 millimeter. So let's leave that at 0. Now these two marks over here, these are, in my opinion, the most important and the ones that you can do the most with. What these tell you is how far is the object you've got selected from this corner of the ruler. I'm going to call this corner of the ruler 0 because that's what it really is, right? If you were to use this as an actual ruler, 0 would be over here, and then the numbers would increase as we went over to our right. So on this, and we're going to call this an axis, right? This is our x-axis. It's telling us the object is 12.5 mil from 0. If we change that to 0 and then hit enter, then our object moves to whatever we put in. So if we put in 0, our house moved to the 0 point. If we put in 0 over here, this is our y-axis. Boom, our house moves. Right, so you need to fix this so that it is a little bit prettier for a start, and so that it would actually work if you 3D printed it. Now, what you're going to need to do first up is you are going to need to select the house, and you're going to want to break that apart, right? So click the ungroup button like I just did, and then let it tick across and think for a little bit. Right, what do we got? So we've got a door, and we've got a house. So I'm just going to take the door and throw it out to the side for the time being. Click on the house again, and ungroup that sucker. All right, here we go. This is something that we can actually work with now. Okay, so first thing I reckon that you should do is move the block that the house is made from to the 0 point. So changing both of these values on our ruler to 0. All right, that's not a bad start. Now, if we look at the roof here, we can see that it's way off to the side. So let's put it to the 0 point first. All right, and now let's just have a look. So the house it's telling us it's 20 millimeters tall. And if we click on the roof says that it is 21 millimeters off the ground. So that's why there's a gap there, right? So fix that, let's just pull this down so that the roof is actually attached to the house. And the next thing we're gonna do, we should probably make the roof the same size as the house. So click on the roof, and you can see it is 34 millimeters wide. The house is only 30 mil wide, so let's change that for a start. So just click down here, change that to a 30. There's our roof. And coming over here, the bottom of our house is 30 as well. So the roof should be 30. All right, so I'm a little bit happier with that now. Next thing, let's get this door out of the way, or this door hole out of the way, and let's fix these windows. So these windows, right, they're both the same size. That's nice. They're both 6mm by 6mm. By how deep? 6mm deep. So they're 6 by 6 by 6. That's very handy. So I'm going to change my view so that I am looking dead on at the front of the house. And let's just play with my perspective. So I've got this thing here called Orthographic Perspective, and that's where everything sort of disappears to a vanishing point. I can change it to orthographic, which is where everything looks flat, and that means that it's really much easier for me to move things around if I only want to move them in sort of the flat plane that I'm looking at. So see how now I can move this left and right and up and down, and I can do that really easily. So let's just have a look. I want them to be, let's just say 9mm off the ground. That looks good. And I want this one to be 3mm away from the edge of my wall. So let's put a 3 in there, and that's where that's moved to. Now this one, I want it to be the same distance away from this wall over here. I want it to be 3mm. So I'm gonna actually need to do a little bit of maths here. I'm gonna click on this box and say, okay, it's 30mm. My window is 6mm, and I want a 3mm gap just over here on this side. So 6mm and the 3mm gap means that that would be 9mm in total across there. Now, if I subtract 9mm away from 30, I should have 21. So let's see what happens if I try 21. Right, perfect. It has moved my window exactly the right sort of distance. Let's look at this from the top. All right, one of my windows pokes out. One of my windows does not. So let's just try and grab this second window. There we go. And just go to the top. And let's just move it so that it is a little bit coming out the front of the house. So let's make that something like minus 3. There we go. Okay, so that's poking out the front of the house now. All right. So let's have a look. So my house was hollow. And the reason my house was hollow is because I had this block in the bottom that was sort of hollowing the house out. But it sort of moved over here. So let's move it smack bang into the middle. So it's 24mm. So if we take 24 away from 30, then we end up with 6, right? And we should have 6mm spread across this side and this side over here. So that means each of those sides has got to be 3mm. So if we look at our ruler, that says 3mm, that says 3mm. Beautiful, that looks good. All right. Now what we can do is we can deal with our door. So our door is 10mm wide. It is how tall? Let's just have a look. The door is 16mm tall, and it's like 10mm deep. Okay, so let's move the door over here, and this one should be nice and simple. If the house is 30mm wide and the door is 10mm wide, well then, 10mm over here, 10mm for the door, 10mm over here. That's our door's nice and smack bang in the middle. It's poking out the front of the house like this, but it goes all the way inside our house, which is what we want as well. So we're pretty happy with that. And lastly, for the house, let's fix this chimney. So the chimney, let's just move it into, I think a more attractive position. So just sort of arbitrarily moving things around. Let's go 4mm. And 4mm back. Oh, it's already 4mm back. And then this block here. Now this block here is a little bit bigger, so we don't need to move it as far. So experiment with that and see what looks good. Looking good to me. All right. So now that we've got this house, let's group it all together. So I'm going to drag big sort of loop around the whole thing. And I'm going to combine it or group it together. All right, so there's our house. And it looks so much better than it did when we started. Right, here's what we started with. Here's where we're at now. All right, looking pretty good. So now I want you to turn your attention to this door. So we've got the door. Let's break the door up before we go any further. All right, and let's pull these out of the door. So what I'm going to do, I want to pull them all out together. So there we go. Clicked on them. I've pulled them all out together. I've been able to do that because they were all grouped together. All right, we'll deal with these in a little bit. Let's just deal with this door for the time being. So let's move the door back to where a door lives, which is in the doorway. Now, I wanted this to be something that you could remove, right? I wanted it to be like a door that you can have there, a door that you can remove. If you wanted to, you could put little hinges there and actually swing it so it opens. So I've left a gap, but I've left a gap that's huge. You do need to leave gaps in 3D printing if you want things to sort of fit inside other things, but you don't need to leave a millimeter gap all the way around. That's far too excessive. What I want to do is I'm going to change this to be 9mm, and I'm going to change it so that it is 16mm tall. Okay, so we can see now that we don't have a gap at the top. So we need to change that, right? Let's pick another measurement. So let's go with 15.75. And that has left a little gap. That is 0.25 of a millimeter. That's about one, well, it's not about, it is 1/4 of a millimeter, right? That's perfect. So let's leave a 1/4 of a millimeter gap in here. Let's move the door over to the left and put a 1/4 millimeter gap in there. So if we remember, this space here leading up to our door is 10mm. The doorway is 10mm, and the other side is 10mm. So if we look at this, it says 11mm. So if we want a gap there that's only 0.25 of a millimeter, right, that is something like, or it's not something like, it is exactly 10.25. So it means you've moved it 10mm plus the 0.25mm to give yourself that little gap. Right, and now we got a big old gap over here. Right, let's change that to 9.5. That should close up that gap. All right, so now that is a door that will actually work. Right, it'll fit in that gap, but it won't be so loose that it looks silly, but also won't be so tight that you can't get it in and out. All right, so there's our door. And now let's fix these window panes. So clicking on the window panes, ungrouping them. All right, so this one's a little high. Let's just move him down. All right, so that looks better. Now that we've moved those, let's select them all. So I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard and go click, 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 click. Oh no, I'm not. That's Shift. Hold Shift. There you go. So select them all, group them all together. Right, now we can move them all as one unit, and we can select them all as one unit. That's going to be way easier. So let's just move them roughly into like the position of our door. And let's change our view to this top view. So we're going to need to put these into our door. Now, if we look at these, they're 4mm long. Our door is 3mm thick. So if we want those to go all the way through, we need them to go at least 1 to 3mm into the door. All right, so now that we've done that, let's have a look. All right, so they're the right depth, but they're not in the right position at all. So click on front to get a nice front view. And let's just move these around. So there we are. Now, these are 5mm. And if this house is 30mm, how do we put something that's 5mm in the middle? Well, the middle point would be 15. Right, half of 30 would be 15. So let's have a look at what happens if we put it in a 15. So 15's moved it much too far. Because 15, you know, that's the center line. It has moved it 15mm from the edge, but that's the edge of the windows. It's not sort of the middle of the windows. So if the middle of the windows are half of 5mm, that's 2.5mm. And if we want them to move this direction, then we need to take 2.5mm away from this. So 15 mil minus 2.5, that's going to give you 12.5. And that's going to be nice and in the middle. Now, don't join the door onto the rest of the house, right? Instead, just click on the windows, click on the door, holding shift, and combine those. All right, so there is our house, right? Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take the door and I just want you to move it to the side, right? Because if you want to 3D print this house or if you want to 3D print anything else, if it's got separate parts, they need to be printed separately, right? It's no good having them all together. If you want to print separate parts, they should all be separated. And now let's turn our attention to the house. So this house has a couple of problems. Whoop. Now, as an object for 3D printing, this house has got an issue or two, right? And the issue is there's not really any good view to print this from, or good position to put it in to print it from, where everything will be supported, right? No matter what you do, there's some unsupported material. You know, we could take the house and we could print it exactly like it is, but then we've got this big area underneath the roof that has no support. We've also got this area under the door that's got no support. Okay, so that's no good. We could take the house and we could flip it onto its back. Being really careful that we get that exactly 90 degrees. Right, and that, you know, that hasn't solved our problem either, because now we've got this front bit that has no support. We've also got this chimney that's got no support. That's not very good. All right, so that's not going to do it either. And the only real way that I can think of to fix this house so that it prints is to actually cut it up into multiple bits. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut it up into multiple pieces. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually slice the face clean off it, and we're also going to deal with this chimney, because the chimney needs to go. Okay, so let's break the house up again. Awesome. Now, I'm going to select both halves of this chimney, and I'm going to not move it just yet. I'm going to make a duplicate. I'm going to copy this chimney. I'm going to move it just over here. Right, and then what I'm going to do, select my chimney, both bits of my chimney. I'm going to turn them into a hole. I'm going to hold down Shift and select my roof, and I'm going to combine those two together. Right, now the reason that I've done that is so that there's a hole in this roof, so that we can put our chimney back in later on, right? I've got this chimney, it's over to the side. Stick that back together. Put it over here. Flip him 180 degrees exactly. Move him down flat. All right, chimney's over there. Okay, so now that we've dealt with the chimney problem, we got to cut the front of this house off. So let's join them back together. And group them. Cool. Now, I'm going to get a box. And this box is a hole. And I'm going to make the box big enough so that I could put it onto the whole house. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that box 3 mil back from the edge of my house. See how that's 3 mil? The reason I'm doing that is because the walls are exactly 3 millimeters thick. And I want to cut this house so that the front cuts completely off it like that. All right, and I'm going to drag the box back this way. Now that I've done that and everything that I want in the house is inside that box, I've already got the box selected. I'm going to hold down Shift and click the house. And I'm going to make a copy of that. And I'm going to move that copy just over here. Doesn't really matter where it goes. It's just going to sit over here. Now with this copy, I'm going to combine them. And that is going to cut the entire back of that house off. Cool, and so now I've just got the front. But now with my original, I'm going to go grab the corner of this box, and I'm going to move it so that it comes out the other side. And then I think you can sort of see, I hope you can see where I'm going with this. I'm going to hold down Shift, select my house, and I'm going to combine those together. Awesome. So what this has given me is a front bit of my house and a back bit of my house. And the back bit of the house will print really well if we rotate it onto its back. So I'm going to go minus 90. And that did the exact opposite of what I wanted it to do. So I just hit Control Z there to undo. So let's just move it 90. All right, so now it's sitting on its back. Just move it so that it's flat on the bed. And the house, we just want to put that down nice and flat as well. So rotate that 90 degrees. Move it down. Okay, so that's a house that we could actually print, right? Everything on this part of the design is supported as it prints, with the exception of this tiny little hole for our chimney, but that's not big enough to actually matter. The 3D printer can bridge that just fine. Same with these little windows, it can bridge those just fine. But everything else is nice and flat or nice and supported. See, we flipped the chimney upside down so that it would print the big bit of the chimney first and then the small bit of the chimney second, so that it would all be supported. Right. Now, if this was a design that you wanted to have 3D printed, so if this was like a design you were sending through and you were like, yep, I want to print this, awesome, then what you would need to do is you would need to save all of these pieces as different files. And the way to do that is actually really easy. You click on the file, or you click on the object, and you go to export. Right, from this menu, you'll see it says the selected shape. So it's going to download just the selected shape, and you're going to download that as a .stl. So we click on that. Ugh. And if it hasn't asked you where to save it, you need to play with your settings. So if I go up to my browser and I go settings, this is a brand new computer, and I go downloads, then you need to come down here and you need to click this over here. So this is ask where to save each file before downloading. All right, now when I save it, it'll open a dialog box. Cool, and with the dialog box, I can do some work. So I'm gonna make a new folder. I'm gonna call it Fixing the House. And with your files, make sure you give them names that work, that are sensible, right? So I want your files to have your name in them. So you would put in your name, right? I'm just going to put in Mr. G. A description of what it is. So this is the house front. And if it's for the 3D printer, a color preference, right? Based on what filament we have at the moment. So I'm going to say, I don't want this to be red. I don't particularly like red. I'm going to say blue, right? And I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to save all my other files as well. So click on that. Might show you one more thing with that actually. So I click on the house, save the house. So this is not the house front. This is the house main. That's what I'm going to call it. That's the door. Now this chimney. There's a thing that happens in 3D printing. If you design a hole, that hole will become slightly smaller than you designed. If you design an object, that object will become slightly bigger than you designed. Now, how much bigger? Like quite a small amount. We're talking like 0.1, 0.2 of a millimeter. Very small, all right? But it is something to keep in mind. So this chimney, when it prints, this bit's 4 mil by 4 mil. This hole is 4 mil by 4 mil. The chimney, you'll have a really hard time trying to fit that in the hole. So what you're going to do, click on the chimney. And we are going to change the size of the chimney. So this says 6.07. I don't know how it got to being that size, but it did. We're going to shave a little bit out of that. We're going to go, let's call it 5.9. And we're going to do that on the other dimension as well. So we're going to make that 5.9. Right? Very small change, right? You can barely notice. But it does mean that when this 3D prints, it'll actually fit in that hole, which is really important, right? So we're going to export that. There you go. And that's how you fix the trash house. Now, using that ruler, right, amazing tool for your designs. So in terms of getting things where you actually want them to be positioned, or making sure things are symmetrical and even, it's a really, really useful skill to be able to have. So go away, do the house, figure out how to use a ruler, and then apply that to your own designs. All right, beautiful folks, that's all for now.